American Fugitive by Shingo Zhang. Chapter 22. Moving. Inside the taxi, Ren-Yee called Luo Yanfang. Luo Yanfang said, "I will come over." The taxi came to the apartment at which Ren-Yee used to live. Ren-Yee got out of the taxi and slowly walked into the apartment building. Inside the apartment, Ren-Yee called his parents, who were overjoyed that he was free. He told his parents that he was all right and had no injuries. After the call, he began packing things. He opened the door when he heard the doorbell ring. Luo Yanfang walked in. The two held hands and looked at each other. She saw the scrapes and bruises on his face. Love, guilt, sympathy, forgiveness, all those feelings rose inside her. Yanfang kissed Ren-Yee's cheek gently. He smiled. Between them, the transition from war to peace was formally complete. She said, "Does it still hurt?" "It hurts everywhere." "Would you like something to drink?" She said, "I will do it myself." Yanfang took 2 bottles of spring water from a pantry. They sat around the dining table. Xiao Zichang moved out. "Now I live alone. Have you found a lawyer?" "Still looking." "How was it?" "A headache." She asked, "What is your plan?" "I will move and live with my in-laws." "Isn't it nice to live here?" Ren-Yee said, "I don't want to live here anymore." "You will abandon the business venture?" "I'm not interested anymore." After a pause, she said, "That cassette is still in the Public Security Bureau." He immediately became excited. "How did you know?" "I heard it from a friend." "Why?" "Some retired generals from the old 4th Field Army requested a re-examination of the audio cassette." "Is that possible?" Yanfang shook her head. "I don't know." He stood up. "Let's go out for lunch." "My treat," she said happily. "What type of restaurant will it be? What kind of food do you like?" "Any kind is fine." In a halal restaurant, Ren-Yee added tea to Yanfang's cup. The two clinked their cups. He said, "Thank you for helping me through a most difficult time." She said, "I should have helped. You suffered partly because of me." "Why do you say that?" "I heard about how Xiao Zichang beating you." He shook his head. She said, "I'm very sorry." Ren-Yee said nothing. She sobbed. "I didn't expect he would take his revenge on you like that." He said softly, "It's okay. The doctor said it's not too serious." She took his hand and implored, "Can we be good friends again?" He smiled. "Have we ever been mediocre friends?" She grinned. "Ho Ren-Yee, you've got me. Hurry up and eat." In the middle of the meal, Yanfang said, "You should thank Director Liu. It was he who transferred you to the Jiangan branch. He did what he was supposed to." "Why should I thank him? He could have done nothing." Ren-Yee shook his head. "What kind of information could be in that cassette?" He imitated Lin Biao's Huanggang accent and said, "I'm going to the Soviet Union. Winter in the Soviet Union is so comfortable," while rubbing his hands on his chest. She laughed. Ren-Yee continued imitating Lin Biao. "I also want to be the emperor of a Soviet satellite state." "You are a funny man," she continued. "Lin Biao is dead. It's tragic that Yi Kun and Lin Liguo also died with him," he said. Lin Biao gave Yi Kun a framed stone slab with 2 sentences carved on it. "Hairs don't turn gray at the same time, while hearts are equally warm. Rarely able to sleep on the same bed while alive, but stay in the same place after death." Yanfang was quite surprised and said, "Their love was strong." Lin Biao's birthday gift for Yi Kun, a stone slab inscribed with Lin Biao's writing. He said, "Yi Kun wrote 2 sentences for her husband. Teaching and kindness will never be forgotten. Will follow until the end of life." She sighed. "They really fulfilled that promise." "Yes," he agreed. Lin Biao was a traditional man in many aspects. He liked traditional values like kindness, justice, and morality. He was not like Mao, a womanizer. "Mao, a womanizer? Really?" "Yes." She sighed. "I've heard people say that." But I don't get to see that in any book in this country. At the end of the meal, Ren-Yee paid the bill, and the two returned to the apartment. He packed his belongings in a luggage and called a taxi. The driver walked to the apartment to take the luggage. Ren-Yee and Yan-Fang left the apartment. In the parking lot, Ren-Yee took her hands in his, and they said goodbye. Half an hour later, the taxi stopped in front of the apartment building where Ren-Yee's parents-in-law lived. The driver carried the luggage and followed him to an elevator. When the apartment door opened, Ren-Yee saw his parents-in-law, looking haggard. He said, "Dad, Mom, you have been fearing for my safety for over 10 days. Before Ren-Yee could finish, Shu Shufan, his mother-in-law, said, "Good to see you back." Jin Yong-Shee, his father-in-law, said, "You are not the first person in the family to be imprisoned. I was imprisoned years ago. I was also beaten." Ren-Yee smiled. Since the day Ren-Yee was declared wanted on television, his parents and parents-in-law had lived under police surveillance until he was released. They spent every day in anguish, and were relieved only after Ren-Yee was freed. All three sat down on sofa in the living room. Everyone was silent. The joy of Ren-Yee's freedom seemed to have lasted only 1 minute, and the misery of reality reappeared. Mrs. Jin said, "Guo Jing-Jun's spine was injured and several ribs were broken. He needs to lie down for 4 months. We have visited him. You are an American citizen. Their level of violence on you was moved down a little," Jin Yong-Shee said. "Yes. You take a good rest here. Take care of your injuries first," Jin Yong-Shee said. Ren-Yee nodded. In the afternoon, Ren-Yee cleaned the scrapes on his body in the bathroom. Jin Yong-Shee brought cotton swabs and water. He washed the scrapes on Ren-Yee's back. Ren-Yee grimaced in pain. In the evening, Ren-Yee and Mr. and Mrs. Jin were having dinner around the dinner table. Mrs. Jin asked, "Do you want to book a flight back to the United States tomorrow?" Ren-Yee said, "I will wait a few days. Booking early is better. I can take you to the travel agency tomorrow morning." "No, Mom. I will go by myself." "You don't need to be polite on this. I can go by myself," Ren-Yee insisted. Mr. Jin asked, "When do you plan to go back?" Ren-Yee did not answer. Mrs. Jin asked, "Do you still want to investigate Lin Biao's case?" Ren-Yee did not answer. He was angry because he did not like being told what to do. Many thoughts quickly went through his mind. Go back to America like this? Doesn't that mean giving up? Do I live a normal life from now on? How is that different from death? Ren-Yee said calmly, "Yes, I want to continue investigating." "You still want to do that?" she shouted. "Have you ever thought about Jin Yong-Shee and Tsai-Hua?" "Of course I think about them." Ren-Yee also raised his voice. But he regretted it immediately. How can a person be so selfish? Mrs. Jin shook her head in pain. Mr. Jin was obviously also upset. But he did not say anything. Ren-Yee lowered his head, and did not look at his mother-in-law and father-in-law again. He ate the remaining food in his bowl quickly and said, "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I have to think about it. I will go back to my room." At night, Ren-Yee sat alone in front of the desk in the guest bedroom. A family portrait of his wife, daughter, and himself was on the desk. He missed his family a lot. He wished he could go home immediately. Lowering his head, he thanked God for getting him out of danger in his mind. He took out his cell phone and found his dad's number. "What are you going to tell them? Are you going to buy a plane ticket tomorrow and leave the day after?" With the cell phone in his left hand, Ren-Yee only needed to press one button to inform his parents that he would leave this dangerous country. Leaving China like this? He asked himself. The auto tape was taken by the police. I can't get that anymore. But going back to the United States empty-handed like this? I didn't even hear the auto tape. I spent 4 days in the detention center and suffered so much. However, if I don't return to the United States, what can I tell Jin Yong-Shee? How can I explain that to my parents-in-law? Ren-Yee's eyes returned to his family portrait and thought about the happy years when he and Jin Yong-Shee just got married and when Tsai-Hua was little. My wife and daughter. That is my home. What am I doing here? He also thought about friends in his church congregation. Although he stayed in his parents-in-law's home, and everything was familiar and comfortable, Ren-Yee felt he was in a cage. He stood up and walked to the window. The apartment was on the 12th floor. From the window he saw the street lights along Lakeside Road, and the lights from apartment buildings on the mountain across the water. Fresh air came through the window. An idea suddenly appeared in Ren-Yee's mind. He walked back to the desk and called Luo Yanfang. Do you know where Lin Janhan is being held? I need to ask around first. I will call you back. A few minutes later Yanfang called. Lin Janhan is in Zhongnan Hospital, she said. Ren-Yee put his painter's hat into a pants pocket and went into the living room. Mrs. Jean was watching TV alone. Mom, I will go out for a walk. What? You don't want to rest? Why are you going out? Mrs. Jin's worry was written on her face. She worried that he would be put in jail again. I'm going out for a walk. I'll be back soon. Hearing such a vague answer, Mrs. Jean immediately stood up. No. You can't go out and walk around. I will only go out briefly. I'll see a friend and be back soon. What friend? He said. An old friend. Don't worry. With that, Ren-Yee opened the apartment door and left. Ren-Yee took a taxi to Zhongnan Hospital. Inside the hospital, he approached Lin Janhan's room wearing the hat. A policeman sat next to the door. Ren-Yee told him. I'm Lin Janhan's cousin. I heard he was injured. I want to see him. The policeman took a good look at Ren-Yee and nodded. Inside the room, Lin Janhan lay on a bed wearing a splint on his left leg. Janhan was extremely happy to see Ren-Yee. The two shook hands. They had a lot to say to each other. But for a moment, they didn't know where to start. Seeing the scrapes and bruises on Ren-Yee's face, Janhan said, Brother, you have suffered. Ren-Yee sat on a stool next to the bed. He shook his head. Janhan said, I didn't think too much about the consequences at the time. It made you and Guo Jing-Jun suffer. Ren-Yee touched Janhan's hand. It was the police who beat us. It was not you. Brother, you are really forgiving. Janhan's eyes were filled with tears of gratitude. Ren-Yee said, Let's not talk about the past. Janhan sighed. If I had brought the recording to you 11 days ago, you could have taken it abroad right away. Ren-Yee nodded. Hindsight is always 20/20. Noticing that the policeman was not monitoring, Janhan beckoned to Ren-Yee. Ren-Yee moved closer. Janhan whispered a few words in his ear. Ren-Yee was taken aback. He gazed at Janhan, looking for confirmation. He found it in Janhan's eyes. Janhan whispered a few more words to Ren-Yee. Ren-Yee nodded. 10 minutes later, Ren-Yee stood up. The injury to his lower back made his body tremble slightly. But Ren-Yee was so excited that the pain didn't even bother him. He shook hands with Janhan, and they bid each other farewell.